So welcome to my top 10 list of things to do in Jakarta, the capital of Indonesia. Let's start with number 10. Number 10 for me is the old port of Jakarta, known as Sunter Lake. It's located in an estuary of the Ciliwung River. I think it's been in operation since the 16th century when the Dutch used it as a trading port. You can wander around looking at the old wooden ships. You might even see men putting boxes and cargo into it, and you'll be the only tourist there. It's like a tiny glimpse into the history of Jakarta. And nearby, if you've got time, there's actually a maritime museum. Number 9 on my list of the best things to do in Jakarta is the huge Islamic Mosque. Built in 1978, it's the largest mosque in Indonesia and the 6th largest in the world. It's huge, and because of the number of people who visit, there are stalls selling food and all sorts of things nearby. Although it might not be the prettiest mosque I've seen, it's made my top 10 because it's just so massive. Number 8 on my list of things to do in Jakarta is Sunter Lake. Most tourists have never even heard of the lake, but after reading about it in a magazine, I jumped in a taxi and I decided to walk around one edge. And you know what? It was well worth it. It was built in the 1970s as a reservoir, as like an overflow for the flooding that hits the city. And as I walked around, I spoke to fishermen who explained what they were catching, and I saw loads of boats full of pleasure seekers, and I even stopped at one of the most beautiful white mosques I've ever seen that overlooked the lake. If you've got time, Sunter Lake is definitely worth a visit. Just try to ignore the litter and the garbage that's at the edge of the lake, not the prettiest part of it. Number 7 on my list of things to do in Jakarta is Ancol Beach. Now, Bali might have the famous beaches, but Jakarta has one too. It's not the best in the world, but it's better than it was in the 1960s when the area was a mosquito-infested swamp. Today, Ancol Beach is where the locals of the city come for a walk or a sunbathe or even a little swim in the water. It's really popular with couples, especially as they walk along the Love Bridge. And as well as the small beach, nearby there's like a shopping mall, a fish restaurant, a craft centre and lots of other things. You could spend a day in Ancol Beach. Number 6 for me on the list of things to do in Jakarta is the Sky Bar. The city has lots of Sky Bars, but this is my favourite. It's on the 56th floor of the huge BCA Bank building, and on a weekend it gets ridiculously busy. Before venturing out into the pool terrace, stop in the restaurant and have a bite to eat, but make sure you've got your best clothes on and a thick wallet because it is expensive. After dinner, head onto the terrace for some cocktails as you watch all the party people mingle and stare down at the lights of Jakarta. Okay, we're into the top 5 of things to do in Jakarta, and for me, it is Jakarta Cathedral. It was built over a century ago, and it looks like it belongs in Germany or France. Its Gothic spires are a major landmark of the city. The interior is worth a peek too, full of stained glass windows and statues. And as if to prove how culturally inclusive Indonesia is, just across the road is the mosque, which was number 9 on my list. Number 4 for me on the list of things to do in Jakarta is Chinatown. The place dates from Dutch colonial times when they set aside the area for Chinese workers and traders. Today, many of those descendants still live in this Chinatown. Even though it's in the middle of the city, it almost feels like another place. But unlike Chinatowns in, say, Kuala Lumpur or Singapore, hardly any tourists visit Jakarta's. And for this reason, it seems more authentic to me. You can visit a Buddhist temple, wander through the markets where you will see all sorts of things, including things that you won't even recognize. But be warned, in one area of the market, I saw someone skinning live frogs. It was a sight that will stay with me. Despite this, Chinatown is still one of the most interesting places to visit in Jakarta. Okay, we've made it to the top 3 things to do in Jakarta, in my opinion. And at number 3, we have the Thousand Islands. The Thousand Islands are a set of tropical islands just north of the city, accessible by boat. And despite the name, there are actually only 340 of them, of which I think only 13 are developed. We visited one of the islands called the Tiger Resort, and because there were so few people there, it was just a gorgeous retreat away from the Jakarta fumes and traffic. But just be careful of the sea urchins as you paddle through the ocean. But the Thousand Islands, if you have time, is definitely a place to visit. Number 2 in my list of things to do in Jakarta is the mighty Monas Tower. This 132-meter obelisk lies in the center of Merdeka Square, and it was opened in 1975 as a visual representation of Indonesian independence. There are only a limited number of tickets to get to the top, but if you get there early enough, then you might just be able to secure a ticket. You'll catch an elevator to the top, and then you can see Jakarta spreading out in all directions. But even if you don't make it to the top, there's a cool museum around the base full of dioramas and a huge room called the Hall of Independence. As a symbol of Indonesia, Monas is a must-see sight. And so we've finally reached the top spot in my list of things to do in Jakarta. And if you've only got time to do one of them, it's got to be this. Fatahilla Square, the old heart of Old Batavia as Jakarta was once known. Fatahilla Square is a gorgeous slice of old colonial history surrounded by old Dutch buildings and the city hall. There's a cannon and there's all sorts of street performers, and the locals will be riding colourful push bikes, and as a foreigner you'll be noticed straight away. Teenagers will come up to you wanting to interview you. They'll be asking questions such as, how long have you been in Indonesia? Do you like Indonesia? Do you like Indonesian food? If you answer these questions, they will love it, and one of their friends will be videotaping you. But be warned, there'll be lots of people wanting to interview you. To escape the questions, take refuge in Cafe Batavia, a gorgeous old building that serves great food with a nice view of the square. So that is why Fatahilla Square is my number 1 thing to do in Jakarta. Go and see it for yourself. You will not be disappointed. So that's it, my top 10 list of things to do in Jakarta. I may have missed out a few, but I think I got most of them. Tell me what you think, write in the comments below. See you next time.